here with Willow. And Willow, I really appreciate you being willing to talk today. And I reached out to you because I've been watching your videos, and you, like many others, went down the testosterone path. And I was wondering if you could first tell us a little bit about that. Based on your videos, it sounds like you weren't gender dysphoric as a kid, that you sort of had the ROGD display and then went on testosterone. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, well, I guess I'll try to be short. So that was when I was about, so my ROGD started when I was 16, because I was on Tumblr, of all places,
Oh.
the usual suspect. And just like through the feed, there was a bunch of trans stuff that popped up. So I was like, oh, what's this? And I look it up, and then I'm like, looking at the words and self-diagnosing myself, and then I go down that rabbit hole, and then I make myself believe that this is me. And so I stubbornly went through the motions of trying to get testosterone, and I'm not entirely sure how else to describe it. It's just like, that's the basic thing, the basic
And you're
structure.
a little bit, you are, I hate to age you, but you're in mid-20s, I think.
Yeah, 25.
And so how hard was it to get testosterone when you were looking for it? Because now it's relatively easy.
Oh, it was easy.
Was it?
So how it happened was, I went. My mom found like this trans support group, and so we went to that. And she was like mingling with all the parents in the other room. And while she was mingling with them, she got like what's it called? Not a referral, but a lead. She got a lead for a doctor who was able to be the hero for trans people, if you will. And so we went immediately to him, and he does my blood work, blah blah. There isn't any transfer from my therapist, like the letter, whatever it's called, informed consent, I think that's what it is. There wasn't any of that. I didn't sign anything. I just go to his office, and he's just like, oh yeah, we could do that, sure. And then the next thing I know, there's a nurse and poking my butt with a needle, and then bam, I'm on testosterone. That's it. That's all that happened.
Wow.
And the consultation was like 30 minutes or less.
Wow. Wow. And you were 17?
Yeah, 17.
Oh my gosh. And it sounds like your mom was trying to be the good supportive mom.
Yeah. Even though she was like, I don't think this is you. You don't seem like a guy. You've never shown any like signs of it. So, but I don't think there's anything I can do. So I'm going to just support you anyway,
Kind of like when a daughter has a rotten boyfriend, and the mom sort of is like, well, I love you anyway, and I'm just going to try and be there so that when you break up with him, you'll still want to come to me for support.
Oh my God. Yeah. And I am the rotten boyfriend.
We're thinking the testosterone was the rotten boyfriend.
Yeah.
So how did you feel after that? I mean, that happened really quickly. So from the time you were 16 to 17, you sort of had a complete identity shift. And how did you feel after getting that shot?
Well, yeah, after the shot, it was euphoric. It was, I finally got my way. Yeah, like, it's like when a kid just gets the candy that they want, and it's so novel to them. They think they've achieved, like, they were so stubborn about something, and they finally got it, and they're just so happy about it. And I rode that euphoric wave for about a year, and then it maybe a little less, and then it just started plateauing, and then it was like, oh, this is just life now.
Did you ever consider getting surgery?
Oh yeah. So I got a consultation for double mastectomy, and that surgeon was also like, oh yeah, we'll just do it. I'm not even gonna like think about what you've gone through, what's going on in your head mentally. I'm just gonna do it. So, but for bottom surgery, I guess, considering there's different types of bottom surgery, I'm just gonna call it that. I considered it mostly because I was like, well, I'm never gonna have kids in the future, so I should just do it. And my mom was like, ah!
The
Freaking out.
boyfriend just
Yay.
became abusive.
Yes, exactly. She was like, oh my God, we need to like stop. We need to slow down. And she tried to do the whole like, oh, but what if you want kids in the future thing? And I was like, no. But I considered it. I didn't get a consultation or anything for that one. I it was just in my mind. And I think probably what my mom was thinking about the double mastectomy was uh, it might be okay. It's not as invasive as bottom surgery, and it's not as, I guess, regrettable, because you can always like you can replace it, but it's obviously not the same thing, but you can replace it. Whereas once you cut out the good bits down here, it's gone. Can't do anything.
Well, and
So
especially the ovaries, once they're gone, then you're addicted to hormones one way or the other for the rest of your life. So,
yeah.
yeah. So I'm wondering if you could put yourself in the position of a doctor and someone comes in like you who says, I want testosterone. What kind of screening do you think that doctor should do?
That's a good question. uh, well, of course, when it comes to just hormones, I think there should be a little bit more communication with like that gender therapist. And I think there should be a little, I mean, it's hard to say because like a doctor kind of just, they want to hear your physical symptoms, right? They're not really there to understand you mentally. And I think more communication should be between the gender, or whoever, I guess, the gender therapist, let's say, and the doctor themselves. And I don't know. It's a hard question to answer because doctors are there just to like listen to your heart and let's read logs and all the physical stuff. But when it comes to mental, that's not their job. So it's difficult for me to think about that. But it is a particular situation when it comes to gender dysphoria. So I would imagine there would have to be a little bit more questioning going on. Like, I guess I wouldn't imagine they would say something like, "Oh, what happened in the therapist's office," but more like, I don't know, some kind of verification, I suppose. I don't know. That
Yeah, it
one's
is.
really
It's
tough for me.
complicated. And I was wondering, a lot of the detransitioners I've talked to have had sexual assaults or are on the autism spectrum or have had other mental health issues. Do you feel like any of those played into your wanting to transition?
No, no, I was thankfully never assaulted by anyone. I never experienced anything like that, and I would say for me, it was mostly like just the energies that were going on between my parents, and it was primarily around their divorce and how my dad was affecting the family. That was mostly it. And you didn't list it, but there is the factor of internalized misogyny as well. Like for a little girl, when they're surrounded, or at least there's one prominent person in their life who just hates femininity and women, that's going to deeply affect that little girl, and they're going to start hating themselves. That's what happened to me.
That's really an important factor because there are girls who grow up in families where um, being a girl sucks, basically, and where it's really clear that they're not valued. Um, and I think that can come from both male and female parents. I mean, I think that in society too, that if you're even a little sensitive to that, you're going to pick up on it.
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
just makes me sad to think that that you grow up with that. And it seemed like there was something else that you mentioned in one of your videos, that you were also sort of surrounded by friends who were in the LGBT scene. And so I always think that there are lots of different ways that kids sort of can express dysphoria. and gender dysphoria is one way. There are lots of different ways, but it sort of depends on the social milieu that they're in, and other factors that, one might become anorexic, one might become gender dysphoric, one might develop OCD. So do you think that yours developed primarily because of the social scene you were in?
Uh, I think so. Like it's hard for me to go into it because it almost sounds like I'm blaming them, but I would say it's mostly me. Uh, like they weren't exposing anything like, 'cause everybody around me, friends wise, was like a gay, bisexual, and nobody ever talked about trans stuff. Um, I think it was mostly how some of my friends were also on Tumblr, and we would like share stuff with each other. And then it's just, uh, I'm imagining it right now, like we were like just dancing along a cliff kind of thing, and on the cliff side is the trans stuff, the indoctrination, that kind of stuff. So I was the one who accidentally fell off, whereas my friends just stayed up there, and they're like, "Oh well, she's gone now. Whatever, let's keep
There she
dancing."
was.
Yeah, that's basically what it was. So like, so we were just kind of in that direction of it, and I just got caught up and went through that charade.
So I'm assuming it was your father that was sort of instilling those internalized misogynistic feelings. Um,
Mhm.
how did he respond to you transitioning?
Yeah, that one's weird because I remember we were in my mom's living room, and he came in, and when he saw me like very visually male, he just kind of, he accepted it in like a, like if I had told a stranger, like a complete stranger, like, "Oh yeah, I'm trans," and they go, "Oh yeah, that's great," and then that just stops right there. That's basically how he reacted. It was, and it made me personally feel a little like ashamed a bit, because there wasn't like, "Oh wow, what made you," he didn't ask any questions. It just didn't, it felt so hollow and unsupportive. And so I just felt like I felt myself shrinking back a little bit. It wasn't very nice.
Yeah, you'd think there'd be at least some emotion there.
Yeah, he just kind of nodded and smiled. "Oh, that's interesting. Great." That's all I remember. If he had said anything supportive and like really like wow, I would have remembered.
Yeah, it seems like either way that you'd expect some kind of a response more than just, like, oh yeah, hey Willow.
Yeah, that's how my oldest brother also responded. They were like, "Oh, good, great."
Huh.
Pat, pat.
Interesting.
Go on your way now.
It's just interesting because I think about a lot of these girls, the ROGD girls are, it is almost like a rebellion and a pushing up against something. And if you don't get any response, it seems like it might push you to go further and further.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I think it definitely is rebellion, because you want something. You want some kind of reaction from somebody, because when you're isolated, you're not thinking about pushing back at all. And once there's nothing to push back to, you just kind of, well, at least this is how I felt. I was just like, well, I don't see any reason why. Um, I want to respond to another thing you just said, but I don't remember what it was.
Well, if you think of it, just butt in.
I guess.
So just out of curiosity, what kind of changes did you have, as you were taking the testosterone? What kind of, obviously like some facial hair. What else happened?
Well, I was only on it for a little over a year, so there wasn't any major changes. I know when you're on it for like about 10 years, way different things happen. But for me, it was a basic like fat redis. I don't have much fat, but there was fat redistribution, and my voice dropped within like 3 months, I think, and Yeah, the hair, definitely that started sprouting up. And it was really weird how it sprouted up because it was like long peach fuzz, which I didn't expect. And I think, I don't know about my feet, but I think they like, the cartilage like kind of got a little wider a little bit. I hear that the nose can widen a little bit. I don't know if that happened to me, but let's see. My hair, my hairline started receding a little bit. I don't, my family has no history of male pattern baldness, but it's what happens to all males. They just get that sort of semi widow's peak just to make their head more square. That's what I got. And let's see what else. Um, I think I wouldn't say my jaw got wider or anything, but I think just the muscles got more. I don't know. I
Pronounced,
don't know a
maybe?
word. They got more prominent, I guess.
Yeah.
Like my muscle gain got like way bigger, and then my appetite totally increased. I was more awake for sure.
What about emotionally or just sort of in your relationships? Did you notice significant changes?
Yeah, so I got a lot more confident in a way. Like I was still shy in like class and stuff, but I was like around my friends and some strangers, I would be more confident to do like stupid stuff because when it comes to a gaggle of men, if you will, like a gaggle of young boys, they're gonna like try to outwit each other with like stupid stuff. So I tried to be on par with that, and I felt like testosterone was kind of being like come like encouraging me like come on, let's do something crazy. And then I got my temper was a little bit shorter. Like usually uh my temper is like pretty tolerable, but on testosterone it was just kind of like you did this to me, now I'm angry, or I've gotten a little forlorn, not sad, but just like that frustrated me. And then I felt like before when I was on estrogen, like pre-T, it's like I could connect with other people on an emotional level pretty decently well, and I felt like I could empathize and understand them more. But then on testosterone, it was like there was this thick glass wall between me and everybody else, and even to my own emotions. So it was like on estrogen, I would be like, I know relatively what I'm feeling right now. But then on testosterone, it was like, what is this thing? I can't connect to it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah. And you were in school. So you were, I'm assuming, in high school when
Oh
this was
yeah.
going on. How did that go? How did the teachers respond? And I mean, it's a pretty significant change.
Uh, yeah. So if I remember correctly, in the beginning, like I was the only trans person in the school, so it was a little surprising to them, but uh, surprising to me. They were actually trying to be like really supportive, and I most I mostly talked to the female faculty and stuff, and they were like, I think it's because they saw me as a girl, and the large part of the school, especially for the women there, they were like, feminists. So they were just like, wow, this young lady wants to do these things, so of course we'll support you. And then, so as I was transitioning, they were really pretty supportive of me. But then, as I started transitioning more and looking more and acting more guyish, they started to like the support just kind of disappeared a little bit, which was weird. And I remember that because like I would meet with other teachers, mostly the female ones. The male ones really didn't care, but like the female ones were just like not as trusting of me anymore, and and I felt like they didn't want to like pay as much attention to me. I don't know.
Interesting. So maybe as feminists, they were really viewing you now as a man and less worthy of their attention.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like, oh, I hate feminism or anything. It's
No.
just like, it's like there's distinct differences between all different types of feminists. And I think they were just the ones who were like, we see the boys in our school as a little obnoxious, so we're just going to put you into that pool. I think it could have been just the school itself. I don't know.
And how did the boys respond when you started using the men's bathroom?
Uh, uh, I didn't go in that much because because I'm like, pee shy, so I didn't really go into the bathroom that much. But when I did, they just completely ignored me, which is, that's fine.
So it didn't feel like you weren't welcome or anything. It was more just like, oh.
Yeah, it was just like they might have glanced at me, but they weren't like, "What are you doing in here? Get out, woman!" It wasn't like that.
I know I'm thinking of the one time recently when I accidentally went in the men's room. Um, and I don't know how this happened. It was just me being a dingbat. I just walked straight into the men's room instead of the women's room. Um, and there were three men at the urinal. And my first response was, why are they in the women's bathroom?
Wait a second.
And then I was like, ah. And
Click.
as I was leaving, they were so mad. I mean, they were irate. And I hid. I went and hid for the day because I was like, I don't want to run into them again. Because I mean,
Oh,
they were really upset. Grown men in suits and, obviously.
wow.
And so it is interesting how different people respond.
Oh, that's
And
interesting.
yeah, I think that there's, generationally also
Oh,
differences.
that's a good point.
So what was it that happened to you? Was it just the sense of like, this isn't really doing it for me anymore? Or was there anything more specific that caused you to stop taking the testosterone?
Uh, yeah, so there's quite a few different things. uh, the immediate ones that I know that like really got for me to change my mind is like part of it, like what I was saying before with like with the lack of fighting, because in my immediate environment at the time, so I had graduated high school and I was mostly at home, and the job that I had was it was based on a schedule, and my boss just wouldn't like pen me in so I could do work. So I would often like have just a week of me time, and my brothers were uh, at least one of them I believe was living with me, and he would be at work, and so I would just have a ton of time by myself, and I had all this time to just think about stuff. And like every week, I believe it was every week, I was injecting, testosterone. And then as I was doing it, I just got like, I started thinking about like, I don't want to be a trans guy. I want to be a guy, and a guy wouldn't inject himself with testosterone. So I feel like this is like kind of foolish of me to do. Like it's a chore. And then also with that, like when I was going to work, I I had like this crush on this my straight male coworker, and I confessed to him, and he says like, "Nope, sorry, I'm not into men," and I'm like, "Okay, I'm crushed." And then that kind of really like clicked with me after I like processed it, and I was like, you know what? I don't think like this whole identity that I've built for myself is really crushing my dating life. And I know there's like other trans people out there who are like, oh, but you still can date as a trans person. But I think it's a lot harder back then, at least. I don't know about now, but it was really difficult for me because I was already socially weird and I didn't know how to like put myself out there. So that was a really like prominent thing that convinced me to change my mind. Uh, and then just uh, I'm having trouble remembering right off the top of my head, but there was just other factors that made me change my mind as well. One of them that I'm thinking of is I had like a really masculine friend, female, and there were so many bits about her where she was more masculine than I was, and even on an emotional front she was more conservative, I guess, for lack of a better word. And and just the way she'd carry herself, it was definitely like opposite of me. And I was like thinking to myself, like, why is it that she accepts that she's female,
Mm.
but then why don't I, like, why doesn't she become trans, you know? So stuff, kind of stuff like that. There's more to it, but I think that's just going to be the condensed version for right now.
And so when you stopped taking the testosterone, how quickly did you notice the changes, and what kind of changes did you notice?
Uh, the fat redistribution was very immediate. I could feel that. Uh, let's see what else. I don't really remember. I think I was just too busy being like emotionally distraught because of like the third puberty that was going on. So estrogen was coming back in.
And how do you go about explaining to people that you're detransitioning, especially if you were passing as a male?
Uh, let's see. I do remember going on Facebook and then posting it, and then people were very supportive of me. And then when it came to like strangers, like it was, I mean, I didn't really bother with them. They would like, misgender me, and then I would feel really horrible about myself. But then with friends, like they would support me, and uh, yeah, nothing really. I don't really remember actually. I think it was pretty smooth, the transition, but it was just my problem was with strangers at work, and they would just be like sirring me instead of mamming me. And I would just be like, "Oh, I'm hurt. I'm a girl, I swear." And especially with like really short hair, and it looked like I have curly hair, and I didn't know how to take care of it then, so it was just like this fro, and it just I look like a dude so much, and ugh, it was embarrassing.
It sounds like once you sort of had that realization, it was just a like, now I need to just sort of accept who I am.
Yeah, it was hard. It was hard doing it, and at first I wasn't like, oh, I'm a female now. That didn't come up until uh, let's see, I detransitioned at 19, so I think it was about when I was 20. I was finally like, yeah, I'm a girl. But before that, it was like I'm this agender amoeba. I don't know. I
I'm
was just
not
like,
like them. Different from
I wanted to just completely like not think about gender anymore. So I went with that label for a while.
amoeba.
No, not amoeba. No, I was just like, I'm agender. I don't know what I am. Leave me alone.
So out of curiosity, you're making a lot of videos and sort of putting it out there. And I'm curious, first of all, if you've gotten any backlash, because I've talked to some detransitioners who have, and I have, as a result of sort of talking about my history and such. Have you gotten any kind of negative feedback from that?
Yeah, I have. But surprisingly, most of them are people who don't understand what detransitioning is. And so they'll just think I'm an MTF, and a lot of them will be like anti-trans, and they'll just be like, "Oh, just stay a guy," or something like that. It's so just the disconnect. Like you're not paying attention. But I haven't got anything from like. I mean, I have got some things from like people within the trans community, and a lot of when they approach me, like they do disagree with some of the things I say, but at least they're civil.
Oh,
But
that's good.
definitely the people who are most uncivil are the people who are like totally anti-trans.
It's interesting because I've had people, I think because I've talked about this so much, people sometimes aren't really sure, like, so are you a girl or a boy? Like, they don't really know.
I'm a woman.
I know. And it's so funny because I'll have people be like, wow, you passed really well.
Wow.
Because I'm in some, I joined some, what do they call it? True Scum groups. Just because like before all this started happening, I was sort of still like kind of trying to figure this all out. And so it's interesting how it's gotten to be to the point that sometimes it's just a blur, that that, you know, people are like, so what are you at this
Yeah,
point?
yeah, that's weird. It's so weird when people do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had some people be kind of vitriolic a little bit, and you really do have to laugh it off because a lot of the time they don't really make any sense. Like, how did you conclude to that?
So what motivated you to start making the videos? Because you sort of did your like I'm detransitioning, but now it seems like it seems like you've got a lot to say.
Yeah. So what made me start was I started seeing. Well, first I was like watching Blair White, and she was doing uh, video collabs with, or like interviews with other detransitioners. And then that made me go, oh, wow, there's people who are just like me out there. Whoa. And so I didn't jump down the rabbit hole at first. I just like, I would see some detransitioners with their own channels, and I would look at them, and I could relate a little bit. Most of them are, you know, lesbian. So, and not like, I'm not. So I'm like, I don't really totally relate to what's going on. But then sometimes I would see people who are like bisexual or straight women, and I'd be like, okay, that I relate to your story a lot more. And so as I was seeing more detransitioners cropping up, I was like, I want to be part of this number because it feels really important that more detransitioners come out and, you know, speak their story.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that because I don't know if you've heard of Laura Reynolds. She's done some videos and detransitioned. And one of the reasons that she started making videos is because she's not a lesbian. And she felt like the narrative was that if you are an ROGD girl, it's because you're a lesbian. And she wanted to come out and be like, no, no, no. And she mentioned something that I've heard you talk about too, which is autoandrophilia.
Mm-hmm.
That was sort of a component to her desire to transition. And so it's a very different narrative than the butch lesbian who transitions because she's a butch lesbian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, yeah, I saw that one. That was good. I only saw one part of it though. And I think she was really insightful with all those thoughts. Yeah, for me, uh, I mean, I don't like saying, oh, I had autoandrophilia because I don't genuinely know if I had it or not. Because I wouldn't diagnose myself with anything without a professional with me, you know, diagnosing it with me. But I think I had some traits where I was like, I was watching a lot of like gay porn, if you will, and that I was so attracted to these things, and you know, my friends were also into like the gay porn thing as well, so it was kind of infectious, and we were all just like crowding it on each other, obsessing over this thing, and then I took it a step further with how like uh, masculine my history had been as a kid, not with gender dysphoria, but with just like I've always felt more connected to masculinity in a way, not in a uh, uh, I guess for lack of a better phrasing, a trans way or something, but just in a like I'm a girl who's just so happens to be a little bit more masculine, that sort of way, I guess, if that makes any sense. And because I had older brothers, so I wanted to connect to them. But yeah, I forgot where I was going with that.
So you don't feel like autoandrophilia is a big component of who you are. It was sort of just part of the socialization that you were in at the time.
uh, I guess I'm not entirely sure. Like I think it definitely was a component. I mean I wouldn't say like, oh, it turns me on being dressing like a guy or something. It was just like the thought of male on male relationships were superior in my mind, and I felt like as a teenager I couldn't relate to the whole I couldn't relate to the whole you know, the heterosexual relationship. I was one of those annoying teenagers who were like, I'm heterophobic. I think those relationships are stupid. You know, that's sort of like, like you dummy. There's nothing wrong with them. But I just was so adamant about not relating to the female in those heterosexual romances, fiction, you know. Eh,
And it's not like surprising because the role of female is so often sort of mousy or like I don't know, like I mean for me growing up I was like, ooh, like I don't see
Okay.
myself as that help, help, you know?
Right. Yeah. Okay. Good. You know what I'm talking about. It is weird because it was always it's mostly like a blonde woman or blonde young lady, and she's just like, oh, help me, please. And then this prince comes in. He's like, I will save you. And it's just like, yeah, well, okay, what about the rest of us who
Yeah.
don't fit that mold?
And if you were anything like me, I was like the princess's life looked really boring, whereas the guys got to go out and do all this cool stuff.
Yeah, they got to adventure. Whereas
I wanted to be an astronaut, you know, I mean, that was fun. I didn't want to be, you know, stuck in the kitchen baking cookies, which actually I really enjoy now.
I know it's fun though.
But when I was younger, like, oh my gosh, that was like, I just thought, how, and part of that might have been internalized misogyny because I definitely got those messages that, you know, the traditional female things were unimportant and sort of ambiguous and not valued by society at all.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, my mom never wanted me to be like a princess, you know what I mean? Like a Disney princess sort of thing. She never wanted me to be that, but she also like she never encouraged me to do anything hyper feminine. And I think that's not in a like, oh, like being feminine sucks, but like that kind. That branch is a little extra. She just wanted me to be I don't know, normal. Just a girl who just does good things, is alive, you know, does stuff.
Maybe not imposing any
Yeah,
ideas about what you're supposed to be if you're a girl or a boy.
yeah. Her approach in that regard was totally fine, and it's not like my dad was like enforcing anything either. I don't know how much he liked me being like tomboyish. I don't know how much he cared, but he never enforced anything on me either. But he would start saying as I was like 16, I think, 15, 16, he would just start saying weird things like, uh, one of the examples was, I just remember being at his condo and I had like two things in my hand. One of them was like a dirty dish, and I think the other one was like a glass of water or something. And I was just like using one hand to like open up the dishwasher and put the dish in. And I was like kind of struggling a little bit because I don't know, I didn't like put something down and then open it. I just was trying to do it with one hand and be impressive and stuff. And then my dad makes this comment like, oh, girls always try to multitask or something like that. And that was just the general air that he would bring off of just, oh, girls do all these extra things that they shouldn't be doing. And, you know, this like, men are very practical and they know what they're doing sort of thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It was that sort of like, women are extra. They shouldn't be doing these things.
That's really hard. And I think anytime there's a divorce, there is a sense of, you know, the mother was rejected by the father, and the kids respond to that in all different ways. But it's not surprising that a girl would feel that sense of like the woman being rejected by the dad, and maybe even feeling like sense of concern about the relationship with the dad. Well, he rejected mom, maybe he'll reject me too.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about that, but yeah, you're right.
So you mentioned that on your channel that you had some responses of that you should just that you were trans woman. Is
Trans
that
woman, yeah.
trans woman? And I've heard that from a couple of people. I know Elle Palmer and Sydney Wright have taught because their
Yeah.
voices are so low that a lot of times people think that they are actually men. And I just wonder, like, do you have that in real life, or is that just something that you have on your responses on your channel?
It's only on the channel. Like every time I meet people in person, they're like, "Oh yeah, that's a girl." So no question about it. There's definitely only when I was freshly detransitioning, I would get that kind of response. Not that people would be like, I mean, general everyday people will only see biological men and biological women, so they would just see me as a biological man. They would think it, and that's what they would register me as. There was no language of, well, still there is really no language. It's still, trans isn't like an everyday household sort of word to use, so nobody's thinking about that. So it's really exclusively online where people are like, oh, I know what this is, I know what you're doing, you're this. It's
What
just,
do you
whoa,
think it is that elicits that response?
I have no idea. I want to know. I'm curious about that too. I, I
So
like,
that's one of the things when you put it out there, you just never really know. Because one of the things that I get told all the time is that I'm really still trans. I've just internalized I'm internalized transphobic,
you
and then I'll be a much happier person if I just let my true trans self shine.
I've heard that. It's just like you're not that person. You can't dispose of your ideas on somebody else. That's stupid. Like you can't just go on to somebody's thing and say like, oh, I think you have autism, so you have autism or something. You can't diagnose somebody. You don't know their life.
It is funny that we live in a day and age where these labels are so important, and people are just like more than happy to just sort of splat them on you.
Yeah. Oh man, the awareness. Yeah, especially with like not just autism, but people will fling around the word narcissist like it's just like an everyday other word and it has no implications. It's like if somebody's showing a little bit of selfishness, they'll be like, "Oh, you're being a narcissist right now." It's just like, what? Do you know what a narcissist is? You are not qualified to diagnose anybody. Stop it.
And we have gotten to a point where it does seem like everybody's an expert at diagnosing other people at this point.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Like, geez, the arrogance of some of these people.
So if you have any advice for someone, say if you could like talk to your 17, 16, 17-year-old self, what advice would you give yourself in retrospect?
Oh, that's a tough question. Uh, I'm not entirely sure. That's one thing I would really have to strongly think about. It's hard because like I was so stubborn. I think like I guess I think what I needed was a bunch of self-help books because I had so much self-hatred for myself. I know that was redundant, but I didn't see any value within myself, so I needed to surround myself with people who actually cared about me, and well, people did care about me, but like my family, but I needed to seek out friends who could support me in that way. And I did drop a lot of my high school friends because I feel like they were like feeding me into like this realm that I didn't want to be in anymore. So I think a change of location, a change of psychological sort of stuff, I think that would have been like really good for me. And uh, I wish I could have, I guess one thing I wish I could have done as a kid was just talk to my mom about these things and we could just help each other. That's what I wish I could have done instead of just keeping it all to myself and her not understanding what was going on. And I think that's what happens with a lot of these trans teens. There's just not enough communication. And I think that's really super important. So
What about with your therapist? Is there anything that you can imagine your therapist doing differently that would have um, supported you as yourself rather than sort of encouraging you to chase this other life?
yeah, I wish my therapist had definitely challenged me more. I wish she could have asked questions, instead of asking me like, what percentage of male or female do you feel, which is literally what I remember she asked me that question, and I was like, I don't know how to answer this. And I wish she could have said something more like, I wish she could have challenged my ideas of gender, like, what in your mind makes a man, what in your mind makes a woman, what does that look like to you, how does a woman behave, and what is so negative about girlhood that you don't like, let's explore your dislike of this, instead of just being like, oh well, you said you're masculine, so let's just go with that.
Well, and especially if a lot of that was grounded in self-hatred, it sounds to me like encouraging you to transition rather than challenging it ended up not resolving the self-hatred that you had, and maybe even reinforcing it.
Yeah, I would say that she never challenged me, and because she never challenged me, it was more like, in a way, it was encouraging. I don't necessarily remember her saying like, oh, you are, affirming me, like, oh, you are a guy. It was more just like, I honestly don't really remember fully what happened. I think it was just because a lot of it was just me talking about really bad memories as a kid, and then maybe something in my mind was like, I don't want to remember those negative things, so I'm just gonna like cut it out of my memory bank. But yeah, it was like, because there was nothing significant happening in therapy, uh, like if she were to have challenged me, it would have like, what's the word? It would have been more pronounced, not just in my memories, but just as a like, as a I'm struggling finding the words. Uh, just a whole identity sort of, I'm going to think about things. So in a way, because there was no critical thinking, it was in a way encouraging. So
Right, by not, it's sort of tacit approval. So as we're sort of finishing up here, is there anything that you want to talk about that we didn't cover?
what else has made me like look back at it all and be like, huh, why did this even occur to begin with? And as I've been doing this channel and talking with more and more people, more things have like made me uh, more things have been uncovered, let's say that. Like with the internalized misogyny, I never knew I had it until I started the channel. And and then and with all starting the channel too, it's like I've been talking with my mom more about it, and then she's been revealing more things about my childhood to me, and it's just like, I'm like trying to like all piece it together. It's very interesting to me how complicated and yet also kind of simple it is, how someone will convince themselves they're trans, uh, even when they had like no sign of gender dysphoria as a kid. It is very interesting, and it does have a lot to do with some kind of trauma, being socially weird because of that trauma. And and I would say trauma doesn't have to be something like sexual assault. It could be a divorce and it's emotionally traumatic to you. That's what happened to me. So, and then, with my dad's reaction to the divorce and my mom's reaction to it, and also just my family in general, it was just like, ah, it was all a lot going on. And just dissecting that is so, uh, it's empowering in a way, because now I know better, I guess.
Well, and maybe that's a good take home for this, is that there are so many factors. There are so many variables going on. And as kids, we often think we know everything. We sort of have this
Mm,
sense of, I'm right. I want it now.
yeah,
This is
yeah,
this is this is the way it is. Period. The end.
yeah.
And I remember in high school, people would tell me it gets better, and I'd be like, "What do you know?" Um,
Yeah, yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah.
And it probably they should have couched it as maybe it took to like 30s, but it did, eventually get better. Like I think for kids who have any kind of struggle fitting in, that the trans ideology can be so seductive.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's whenever the word seductive comes to mind, I always think of Star Wars. And the trans community is the Sith Lords. It's just like, oh, the Sith is so seductive, quick. You know, that one scene with Yoda talking about the Force, just like, that's it. That's how you could describe what it is.
Well, and that's interesting because that's like this, like, whoa, like that's a big thing. Like if you're talking about like the anti-force here,
Yeah.
that's it's a pretty big thing. And it seems like it's just kind of gathering more and more momentum. So think back, you're, what, 8 years ago where you were, and now we have kids who are, younger and younger and younger getting sucked into this. And I can't imagine like how they end up making sense of it. Cause you had already mostly gone through puberty when you started testosterone.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I'm
for
just
sure.
thinking, whoa.
Yeah, it's scary to think that people way significantly younger than I was are going on it, and it's not the kid. It's not the kid saying, "I actually want this," even though it sounds like it. It's just like they don't know. They have no idea what they're talking about. They have no idea what the consequences are, and it's abusive in my mind for a therapist or even the parents to be like, "Oh yeah, they're probably right. Let's follow their lead." Like, what do you? Ugh.
Well,
It's
and
like,
it's interesting because as you said that, and I'm not sure why this happened, but I flashed on my childhood and my mother. And actually, I don't think she liked having a daughter. I think
oh,
she was kind of ashamed of me because I was a weird girl. And I think that if this had been an opportunity, she might have pushed me faster in that direction because I was sort of an embarrassment as a daughter. And I wonder how often that happens where,
oh,
parents have their own garbage that they're processing, that allows
oh,
them to buy into this, bizarre ideology.
yeah. Yeah, I have a friend of mine who was also the same way. She had two older brothers, and her mom was also ashamed of her. She saw my friend as competition. And there was just a really strenuous relationship between the two of them. And I'm like you said, like maybe if the trans thing was like around in the 70s and 60s and stuff, as popular as it is now, her mom would have been like, "Oh yeah, do it, totally. I'll love you more."
Yeah, yeah, and that's where it worries me when I see, parents who are like clearly they have some issues that they're, it's like being a parent is hard, so I hate to blame parents because it's
I
hard.
know, me too.
But it is this, and I think about your mom who was, probably before all this, like she probably was never said, well, you better let Willow transition or else she'll kill herself. I don't know, maybe
Oh
she
God,
heard that stuff, but
no.
now it's like we're layering all this other stuff on top of it. And I don't know how a parent would make a good decision at this point.
I know it's very difficult, especially with uh, voices like ours are like so silenced and just censored in general and removed. It's like, how is any parent supposed to get help? Because we should be exposed to two different sides of every story so that we can actually have a legitimately informed decision of what's going on.
So do you feel like you were at a, like, you hear informed consent over and over and over again?
Yeah.
The concept of, first of all, were you capable of informed consent? And second of all, did you have any concept of what it was you were consenting to?
Yeah, even if I could have, it would have been just like as a stubborn, immediate satisfaction oriented teenager, I would have skimmed through all of it or not even read it at all whatsoever and just been like, where's the dotted line? I'll sign it. That's what it would have been. And I'm sure that's what a lot of these teenagers and actual literal children are signing themselves up there. That's their reaction. It's like, yeah, it's weird to me because it's like I feel like adults can like reference back to when they were a teenager and how they were reckless and kind of stupid because we all were, even the most smartest among us, we were all kind of stupid and made dumb decisions. So it's just like, why aren't these adults being mindful of like how they used to be? And these kids that they're looking at could be in very similar shoes, you know?
It kind of reminds me though of this whole like the we have to be so tolerant and we have to be so accepting, and it's almost like parents have gotten a message that if they don't support their child and their desires at this point, that it's almost abusive. And I'm not sure how we got that narrative, because really being a parent is sort of setting down those boundaries and making sure to look out for your kid. It's almost the shift in parenting from being the authority figure to being the friend.
Oh God, that's what I've noticed as well. It's just like, you're not really their parent, you're just somebody who crapped out your baby and you're just there to take care of it. Like, where did that narrative come from?
Yeah, it is kind of sad.
It is sad.
Yeah. So do you think you'll ever have kids after having gone through all this and you still have your bits?
Still have my bits. I've thought about it a little bit here and there, and I've talked about it with my husband, and we're still kind of unsure. I mean, like, part of me is like, when I see babies, I'm like, ooh. And then when I have like a pregnancy scare, I'm like, well, maybe. So I think it's more yes than it is no.
So you're glad that you're glad that you didn't go through with getting all that removed.
Yeah, like, I'm glad I still have options available to me.
Yeah. Well, I would be interested in seeing where you are in a couple of years, and where we are as a
Yeah.
society with all this, because it is, like you said, there's this whole other narrative that's not being put out there. And in fact, therapists are now legally compelled in some states to just go ahead and affirm, and they're
Yeah.
not able to even explore issues. So a kid like you, even if your therapist wanted to, in some states, they may be afraid to because of legal repercussions.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I don't know what was going on legally in Washington, but she was definitely like my mom came up to her in private or whatever she did. I don't know exactly what she did, but she went up to my therapist and she's like, I know what my daughter is doing. Please don't encourage her, basically is what she said. The therapist was like, no, we have to explore it. Just like, stop. You're being horrible to your daughter. That kind
Oh,
of
so your mom
response.
did get that message a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Wow. Gosh.
she was smart. Smart enough, I guess.
Wow. And it sounds like you and your mom have a good relationship now.
Oh yeah, it's greatly improved since then. Yeah, yeah, no, it's good. We're very much on good terms, which
That's great.
both very happy about.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your time and your insights. I really
Oh, thank
appreciate it.